Welcome to Chapter 4 of Sports Business Management. Again, we don't have any slides, unfortunately, so here we go. All right, we're on training and developing staff, okay? So this is one of those things, it's kind of a, you know, I've been in situations where I've been in businesses that do very well on the training. I've been in situations where it's they place you in the middle of it and you're under fire and figure it out, right? Um, and again, sometimes doing a lot of training, I can see where companies think, all right, we're keeping them from actually doing the work. And a lot of times they need you to get to work right away. But the problem is if you don't train somebody or you undertrain somebody, the work you're going to get is not the work you want. So it's important to train. Okay. So again, following departments, in most gyms, you can look at these departments and again, some of them are going to get specific training and some of them are going to get universal training, right? So you got fitness, group exercise, hospitality desk, sales, housekeeping, maintenance, aquatics, childcare, cafe or restaurant. Again, some gyms have these, some don't. Um, again, some of the things where everybody might get the same type of training would be like customer service, dealing with difficult situations, cross training. That's not like cross training like fitness wise, but cross training like, being able to maybe do sales and customer service, in front desk or, um, floor staff and personal training, some of those type of things. Membership retention, leadership, selling, special populations, so seniors, members in post rehab, those that maybe have mental or physical, uh, you know, um, infirmities or are debilitated in some way. Grassroots marketing and technical skills. So like their cash registers, computers, pool maintenance, just depending, right? So again, those are all things that everybody might get. And then you got to figure out like, well, which of these is important, right? So we can put them in categories like urgent needs, short-term needs, and long-term needs, right? So customer service would be something that might be an urgent need for all staff. Point of sales could be an urgent need for hospitality, maybe personal trainers if they enter in sales or whoever does that stuff. Team building could be a short-term deal, right? You've got a bunch of new staff, nobody knows each other. You notice there's not a lot of cohesion going on. So this could be something that's urgent, but it's not something that's going to be ongoing all the time. You may do this, and if you keep the same team for several years, you may not really have to do it again, right? Long-term training could be something like cross-selling skills and cross-training things and stuff like that. So it may be not necessarily now, but when you have some time, you may be like, all right, let's get the fitness staff and the floor staff to learn each other's stuff. A lot of our floor staff may be interested in personal training or vice versa, or at least you may want the trainers to be able to go over to the floor staff, maybe not the other way, right? So that's some of the things that you'll look at. So again, you got to figure out, how do we want to do this, right? A lot of times people don't like to come in after work. So, there's the wanting to avoid coming in, late hours, or, like say if you're a place that was only open Monday through Saturday, like coming in on a Sunday or something along those lines. But again, you may not be afforded where you can take like certain people and put them in a class, and then other people, sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't, right? So if you have enough extra staff in every department and you're going to do like, some of the general stuff, what you might do is say, okay, those of you that are working the day shift on Monday, you guys do your normal day shift. The night shift's going to come in during the day, and we're going to train them on this stuff. When the night shift comes on, in the afternoon, the day shift will do their training, something along those. So you got to figure out when you're going to do it. Or we just like, maybe you'll have a day where you're like, hey, we're going to close the gym down, for early on a Thursday afternoon, or, something like that, like Thursday night we'll close like an hour earlier or something like that. And again, if you do something like that, just make sure everybody at the gym knows. I mean, it's always going to be one of those things. There's that one person, I didn't know. I can't believe you guys are closing on me. I mean, you can advertise it. You can like make sure to tell people every time they come in and out of the gym for months, like, hey, remember Thursday, September 15th, we're closed. Hey, remember Thursday. I mean, you could have signs everywhere. It doesn't matter. There's always somebody, right? But these are some different strategies I've seen in like how you deliver it. Who provides the training? It may depend on what you're trying to accomplish, right? So if it's AED, like CPR, if you don't have anybody certified, to teach, you may want to do that. Depending on how cost effective it is, it may be worth like sending one person to go get that, and then they do it. So I've been at organizations where they bring in like American Red Cross and they do it. And then my last position before I was here, it was part of my job description. I had to actually take a higher level medical course, in wilderness first response and all that. And through that, I was then qualified to actually teach all our employees CPR and first aid. Um, and so, it just depends how you want to go about doing those things. So do you want to have outside training come in, or you want to do it in-house? Again, if you're doing team building, you may want to bring in some special organization that does that, because and even if you have somebody that's in-house, sometimes for that it's just a good idea, because if you have any rifts, I guess, between departments and things, the last thing you want, like, so say you have a rift between personal training and sales. Last thing you want is somebody in the personal training department or the sales department that's actually certified to teach a team building thing to do it, because then they're like, oh, of course they get somebody. Yeah, so sometimes with things like that, especially if you're doing the team building because you notice that there's some animosity between groups, and again, in a lot of jobs it's that way. It's like the different crews based on their jobs. Sometimes you start to have these like little almost like gangs form, like in these, it's like, oh, it's the salespeople, oh, it's the personal trainers, oh, it's the front desk, because they're always together, they're always working together. They form different, they form some different bonds. And sometimes there's pay differences between the groups, right? And that causes issues, because they're like, man, they're so overpaid, we do so much more work, and that type of stuff happens, right? So if you're trying to squash some of that and try to get some inner relationship going, and sometimes an outside entity is a better way to go. Where will the training take place? Are you going to do it at your facility, or you can go to an offsite place? Are you going to do some like corporate retreat? Again, how much is that going to cost, right? And so you got to look at those different things. um you know and again, you don't want to do all the training all at once. So like you may do, okay, so we just started September, so we may do like some safety and compliance stuff this month, right? So um you know if you can, it's not bad to have like a monthly time planned, or if it's like a bi-monthly or tri-monthly type thing, like, okay, we're going to do this then, right? So you might say, okay, September we do safety and compliance. October we'll do management skill stuff, because all you guys at some point are going to be overseeing somebody, and so on and so forth. Or we're going to do leadership skills. Or you may do it for groups, right? So the managers, so like the fitness manager, the sales manager, the group X manager, the operations manager are going to go to a leadership skills seminar. There's a lot of ways to unpack that and do that. And then you'll have more specific stuff, right? So within the first month, you may either have, like, depending on how big an organization is, they may go through where they have like groups of new people and positions come in, right? So like, for instance, when I took my job here at Kaiser, within the first couple of weeks or within the first month, they do this like new employee onboarding, like, or new faculty onboarding thing, where they kind of want to indoctrinate you into the Kaiser mission philosophies and teaching philosophies and so on and so forth. So within the first, like, few weeks I was here, I had to go to Fort Lauderdale for a day of training, right? And they go over all that stuff. And so you may do new hire type trainings like that. You may do like new hire sales trainings and things, unless, you only get a sales associate once every great while. It may just be more of a one-on-one type of thing. So again, it may be like a formal training, or maybe like an apprenticeship thing, right? So that's another way you can go. You can have somebody basically work with somebody that's in their same position, and they shadow them, and they just do that for, you give them a timeline. Hey, you're going to shadow this person for a week. You're going to work their shifts with them, and they're just basically it's almost like they're going to do their job and talk while they do it at first. Eventually they're going to be like, all right, you're going to enter this in, I'll watch you do it. And, I've explained it enough. We'll see. And I'll kind of like, chime in, like if you're going the wrong direction, and then eventually towards the end of the training, they're you as the new employer kind of doing all their work to an extent. It seems a little like, hey, what just happened type of thing, but it's for your own good. And then eventually you're now on your own. They come and do their shift and so on and so forth, right? So there's different ways to do that. When personal trainers come in, of course you expect them to know what they're doing, but again, you may want to spend some time with them to see what they do know and don't know. And again, specifics within your gym, right? Where, there might be certain, like equipment they don't know this in like this room versus this room, and kind of getting them familiarized with the layout of your gym. It could be that there's a certain flow to things during the day. That's one of the things is like every gym has a flow. Certain groups of people come in at certain times. Certain, and I've noticed this a lot. Any gym that has like a time where you have an older population, and again, older populations tend to be kind of set in their ways. So I've been in places, where the 7 o'clock in the morning to 8, like 7 to about 10 o'clock, you'll get like a lot of the retirees come in, and they sort of expect things to run a certain way in the gym during that time. Right. And so you know that certain things need to be out, like maybe, it may be a time where you may, if you have televisions or you have music playing, what's playing at 5 o'clock at night may not be a good idea to have playing at like 8 o'clock in the morning. And again, they may have complained at some point, like, we don't want to listen to that music. Da, da, da. So you may have more of a more tame type music versus like at 5 o'clock, you may have some, like, I don't know, like some heavy metal, like head banging stuff. Like, that might be your metalhead group that comes in and they're just like, whoa, I want to throw weights around, right? Where your 9 o'clock in the morning group's more like, nah, man, I want the easy listening station and just some background noise, right? And those are things that you're going to kind of like ease them into, right? And learn the flows of the place. The late group might want it on Sports Center. The early group might want things on like the morning news. Those are things. And again, it's not that you have to have those things and always change those things, but you might find that it's been, like when people ask for something, and if a large enough group, you're like, well, why don't we do that? If it makes you guys happy and we're here to serve you, yeah, we'll change the station. If you guys want to watch news in the morning, we'll put it on the news. If y'all want to watch sports in the afternoon, we'll put it on the sports. Why not? Right? It keeps your customers happy. That's what we do. So when we're training, we've got to figure out, what do they need, right? So this is sort of you can do formal, like the management kind of gets together and maybe you'll bring in, like 1 or 2 people from a department and be like, hey, what do you guys want to know? What do you guys feel like you're not doing well? Or we're noticing these issues. What can we do to fix them, or whatever else, right? And so you go over those things. You create a needs assessment, right? So you determine in each department what are their needs. Then you got to figure out, okay, well, who does those things well? Because maybe those are the folks that we want to teach those things. Or if nobody's doing it well, we got to then look for an outside group to come in and do that, right? Um, you have people come in, from that department. All right, your department, we're noticing these issues. What would you do differently? What do you think will fix this? Take in some criticism, especially from those that work underneath you. And you need to foster the type of environment where people can voice that. It helps, right? Um, what are things we do efficiently? What are things we do inefficiently? Again, on a scale of 0 to 10, or 1 to 10, how successful is this department in these different things, right? You ask them these things, right? Again, look at the budgets. How are the different departments doing budget wise, right? I mean, money, money talks in businesses, right? So if certain departments are underperforming, um, one, you need to know that, and then you need to start figuring out why. Okay. What can you do to add to that department? So what can we do to that department to add value? And again, do we need to spend some money to add some value, right? And then what's the observations of that department as it stands now? Okay. So, when you're thinking about training, the other thing is too, is to have, like what's the end goal of when people come out of the training, what do you want to see happen, right? So what's going to happen on the production side? And how we're going to measure that. Because again, many of you that are fans of The Office have seen Michael Scott with all his meetings, and most of the meetings really lead to nothing, right? And again, in most organizations, most meetings lead to nothing. So again, if we're going to have training meetings, they better lead to something, right? That's the thing. If you're going to train, let's not just have a meeting for the sake of having a meeting, which is very common. Heck, it's common here. It's common at almost every job I've ever been at. Like, oh yeah, we have to have a monthly meeting on this. So yeah, we have to have a weekly meeting on this. We have to have a meeting on that. It's like, okay, what are we going to accomplish out of this meeting? What are we going to fix? What are, like, what's going to be done after this, right? Those are things to understand. If you're teaching skills, you got to break down the components of those skills that need to be done in the sequence that it makes the most sense to do them, and then make sure that they're proficient at, right? Again, if you're going to do interactive exercises, whether it's role playing, it's, like if you're doing, like a challenge course or any of those other things, you just got to figure out how you want to do that. If you're going to put people in groups, how you want to split those groups up. Um, trying to get, anytime you do interaction, especially in big organizations, you're going to have those people that were like born for the theater, and those other folks like, oh my gosh, you're going to get the major eye rolls, right? And then everything in between. All right. So the goal is to get everybody involved. And so you've got to, like whether you bring in a lot of times it's good to bring in outside groups that really specialize in that type of stuff, because a lot of them are, they're really good. One thing is, if you talk to them and they're like, oh yeah, we get some folks that sit in the back, and well, don't bring those folks in. Find groups that are like, no, we get everybody going. We get everybody going. And that's important because you don't want to waste your money on a few like employees that are not getting anything out of it, right? So you want folks that know how to engage and get everybody doing something. So again, it's funny, I've done some challenge course stuff, and a lot of times at the very beginning, there's a lot of resistance. There's a lot of folks that think it's cheesy. Heck, I've been, sometimes I didn't want to go do the extra training. I'm like, oh, this is kind of cheesy, waste of time. But when you have folks that do a good job about it, it isn't cheesy. And by the end, you're like, everybody's kind of like, oh, this is great. And they're doing their thing. So again, make sure the interactive exercises are things that will, one, they'll serve the purpose of whatever type of training you're trying to do, right? If you want to make sure people are like paying attention on things like during CPR class and things like that, a lot of times they'll have fill in the blank sheets that go along with the videos or the talks that are going. Reading aloud, can help people be on their best behavior. Again, this is why we do this with children, and like, okay, read this sentence. Okay, you read the, I mean, and it works with adults too. Case studies, you know, if you have either a small enough group or you can put people in small enough groups with discussions, you go over a case study of like, okay, so-and-so came into the gym, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, blah, blah, blah. Okay, what went wrong? Where did it go wrong? What would you have done differently? And you get them talking, right? Um, Along the same lines, you can do team brainstorming. Like, okay, what could we do at the front desk to better fix this situation? What could we do in the personal training department better? And you know, and you got a board, a whiteboard, and you're writing down all their ideas, right? And then you discuss those afterwards. You know, like, okay, what's the good and bad about this? What's the good and bad about you? And you start narrowing things down, and then eventually you may have a list of 3 things. You know, once you X everything out, it's like, okay, let's work on these 3 things and see how that helps. Again, you can do demonstrations or skits. I've seen these done very well, and I've seen these done very poorly. So again, don't be all Michael Scott and just be like, you know, hey, you know, like I want to do this because I want to perform in front of everybody, whether they like it or not. It really needs to have a clear-cut purpose in what it's going to do. Okay. And so again, hey, those to me are a wild card. Like I said, I've seen some folks do some skits and some demonstration stuff that, I mean, is just brilliant. Uh, and I've seen some stuff, you know, it's one or the other. It either, I've never seen any of them where it's like, yeah, that was all right. It's either, it's like, okay, that was really, really good, or that was really, really terrible, right? So, I mean, just take that into consideration when you're thinking about those. Okay. Some of the things you can do is testing, right? So, you know, you go through stuff and then you test them on it. You know, that puts a little pressure to pay attention. You could do role playing again, depending on how cheesy it is or things like that. You know, where sometimes role playing gets out of hand, where it becomes more funny, and I mean, it needs to be really purposeful when you do that. You can do some written follow-up stuff, you know, like you go through something and then you can, you know, like the person putting it on can follow up with the folks to see how they felt about it, what they learned, so on and so forth. You could do impromptu testing, financial tracking. So again, you know, once you implement staff training, you could like see if there's a change in the department with, you know, the financial stuff and all that. um, Again, these are some of the things to look at that are outside training. Look for industry specific experts. So like you may want to bring in, you know, like if you're starting to train athletes, I mean, personal trainers are picking up athletes, maybe bring in somebody from the NSCA to come put on a seminar with, you know, how best train certain types of athletes. Maybe bring in professional speakers. Professional training companies, public seminars. You know, sometimes you may send them like, hey, this is going on here. It's a great thing for this industry. We're going to send you all to that. Local networking events. Again, you know, like you may like health fairs and stuff like that. Sometimes, you know, like they'll have some education. I mean, those things can be really good. Or it's like, you know, everybody in the fitness industry, you know, like somebody's putting on because they want you guys to buy products, but it's a good thing to go to. And sometimes there's some training that's there. You learn about new equipment that maybe your gym needs or wants, or like systems that would be better implemented at the front desk for tracking people and things like that. Again, compliance and special certs like CPR, AED, or anything else that you might need. Online learning, right? So people can do some e-learning stuff to get certified for things. Um, Again, you know, there's a lot of different training that we can do. I kind of did the overview of this chapter. Just because it's a little, I don't know. Again, guys, get the books and you can look at the specifics, but I kind of hit all the main topics. But there's a lot you can do, and the thing is you really gotta read your business, or at least your department in the business. And you know, the key thing is realizing there's some training that needs to be done. You know, what needs to be done now, what needs to be done later, and what are we trying to get out of it, right? Those are the main things to understand. All right, that's chapter 4. If you guys have questions, let me know. We'll actually do this one live. So that's it.